What you're seeing isn't a science fiction movie or a video made with trickery, it's the 2026 Chinese New Year Gala where a kung fu performance was presented by robots with agility and skill never seen before. But this isn't an isolated event, because if there's something that represents China nowadays, it's technology. Taking a driverless taxi, paying with the palm of your hand, or watching a nighttime drone show is part of everyday life for those of us who live here. However, it wasn't until these images appeared on the internet that the world began to realize that today's China is very different from the image that Western media had given us for a long time. But the most surprising thing is the speed at which all of this is developing, because 6 years ago when I moved to this country, none of this existed. So today we are in Henan province to show you a bit of what I'm talking about and how we've reached this point. First of all, let me give you a bit of context, because although today China is usually associated with electric cars, bullet trains, and artificial intelligence, the truth is that innovation in this country began thousands of years ago. They are the masterminds behind inventions like gunpowder, paper, the printing press, and the compass. These are inventions that changed the course of human history forever. And even though the country went through difficult times during the 20th century, the ambition for modernization never disappeared. In fact, much of the modern China we know today began to take shape in the 1970s when the country opened its economy to the world and started an industrial transformation that is unprecedented in modern history. And since then, to no one's surprise, everything happened incredibly fast. In just a few decades, China went from being the world's factory to becoming a technological powerhouse capable of competing with the United States or Europe. I think it was from that point on that everyone wanted a piece of this change that was happening. Because when China opened up to international trade in 1978, a lot of foreign companies came to invest, to set up their headquarters. But the Chinese didn't fall behind either, because they used that money coming into the country to create their own business initiatives. That's how names like Huawei emerged, which was originally a small telecommunications business in the city of Shenzhen and today is one of the largest and most important technology companies in the world. The same thing happened with Hisense, which has been manufacturing home appliances since 1995, and with VW, which started out making batteries in the same year. Eventually, names like Xiaomi also became known. Today, you see Xiaomi everywhere, but 15 years ago, when I had my first Xiaomi phone, you hardly ever saw it. Often overlooked in discussions about China's technological growth is that none of it would be possible without infrastructure. As companies expanded, China was also building something gigantic, the largest high-speed rail network in the entire world. It was in 2008 that the country's first modern bullet train line was inaugurated. And since then, China has built 45,000 kilometers of high-speed railways, more than the rest of the world combined. But what's impressive isn't just the speed of the trains, but what they made possible. Because these lines connected industrial cities, ports, factories, airports, and logistics centers on a scale never seen before. And thanks to that, all the companies I mentioned before were able to distribute their products quickly, cheaply, and outside the country. In short, technology here wasn't just implemented in robots or cell phones, but was integrated into the country's very infrastructure. And in fact, the city we're in right now, which is called Zhengzhou, is one of the clearest examples of this. Zhengzhou is located practically in the center of China, and today it's one of the most important logistics hubs in the entire country. From here, freight trains depart that connect China with Europe, crossing Central Asia, and it also has one of the most important industrial airport zones in the country, the Zhengzhou Airport Economic Zone. This city literally connects factories, airports, trains, and international trade. But interestingly, this is reminiscent of something that already existed thousands of years ago. And that's because centuries ago, China was already connected to the rest of the world through the Silk Road. Why? Through China all the way to the Middle East or Europe. And in a way, what we're seeing today is a modern version of that same idea. Only now, instead of caravans, there are bullet trains, automated centers, artificial intelligence, and gigantic logistics chains, no less. However, the ambition remains the same, and if there's something that represents that ambition for progress in today's China, it's everything we're going to see today. Now then, welcome to the city of Zhengzhou. The capital of Henan province, a city famous for the corncob-shaped building located in the city center and for being the birthplace of one of the most successful brands in all of China. I'm talking about Mi Shopping Cheng, and you've probably seen it in Latin America too, because not long ago they started opening branches over there. And in fact, they've already opened the first one in Mexico. That's why our tour begins at the largest Mi Shopping Cheng store in the world. From the moment you walk in, everything feels more like a tech-themed amusement park than an ice cream shop. Themed screens, interactive lighting, immersive experiences. And just look at this door that suddenly opened and took us into Mi Shopping Cheng's Polar Express. And when we thought we had seen it all, suddenly this other door opened, which at first I didn't even know was a door because it just looked like a screen. And it took us to this room here, where we can learn about the fascinating history of this franchise. Although Mi Shopping Cheng is now a major brand, it actually began as a small local business. Over time, it became a massive chain thanks to something that China is extremely good at: logistics and large-scale production. Because one of the reasons why Mi Shopping Cheng was able to grow so quickly was that it created its own supply and distribution network. Just look at the model they have here, it's impressive. Throughout these 6 years that I've lived here, I've seen some incredible models, and I always wonder, where do they get them from? These aren't just models. They're the toy every child asked for at Christmas but never got. Wow, even I was amazed by how many people are in this store. Nothing says more about a business's success than the number of people inside. You can barely even walk through the aisles. You have to go like, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. This is a product that I knew they sold here, and you can't find it in any other store in Mi Shopping Cheng. Look, they have frozen pastries, they're amazing. And something I have to emphasize is, like I said, part of the success of this chain is that they kept their prices low for a long time, and the same goes for this store. Even though it looks really fancy, you can see that the prices are quite affordable. This little pastry here costs 11 yuan and this one is 12 yuan. That's about 30-something Mexican pesos, which is a pretty good price. And it's the same with these products that aren't even edible anymore. They're still very affordable. These Legos here, for example, this one is like the god of money, cost 29 yuan. Mish is just one example of businesses that have thrived thanks to the infrastructure of China and Zhengzhou. And as I mentioned, this city is one of the most important logistics hubs in the country. Here is the China-Europe Railway, from where goods are shipped to other countries. And also the Zhengzhou Airport Economy Zone, where we are right now. This is not just an airport. It's an aerotropolis that combines product manufacturing, assembly, and export all in the same place. What you're seeing is the foundation of China's international commercial success. Because your product can be brilliant, but it wouldn't get anywhere without the help of places like this. And here's an example for you: iPhones. Foxconn, the manufacturing company that makes many of Apple's products, was one of the pioneers that turned this aerotropolis into one of the largest technology production centers on the entire planet. And something I just learned is that Zhengzhou is nicknamed iPhone City because of the number of iPhones that pass through this logistics hub. I'm not surprised, because in this place that works like a logistics machine, the product parts arrive, are assembled, and exported in less than 48 hours. But why should I just tell you all this when I can show you? Let's start with the exploration. First stop, BYD. BYD started out making batteries, but today it produces electric cars, buses, energy systems, and automotive technology that's already making a big impact in Latin America. In fact, in countries like Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, or Chile, it's becoming more and more common to see taxis, buses, and electric cars from this brand. And what's interesting is that they were very likely assembled here and also left from this same airport area. And honestly, it's one thing to hear about BYD, to see their cars on the streets, and it's something else entirely to visit this factory, because they even have a racetrack. This is the Yangwang U9, an electric hypercar produced by BYD. It's impressive. This car was introduced as an extreme technological innovation, since each wheel has its own electric motor, meaning it has 4 motors. It also has active suspension that is capable of jumping or hopping, and in terms of performance figures, it competes with brands like Rimac or Bugatti. It is capable of reaching a speed of 100 kilometers per hour in just 2.36 seconds, and has achieved record speeds of up to 492 kilometers per hour, making it the fastest electric car in the world, according to BYD. What I can say is that it's a super low car. I have to be careful getting in because I'm definitely going to hit my head. Whoa! The seats move! As you can see, the interior of this car is also impressive. And that's because it was designed by Wolfgang Egger. He used to design interiors for brands like Audi and Lamborghini. But this car is made for what it is because, as you can see, it only has 2 seats. No one else fits in the back, so it's just for you and your boyfriend or you and your friend. No family trips here. Since we have VIP passes today, we're going to be able to test the race cars that they try out here. I'm just worried about why we need a helmet to get into this kind of car. What's gonna happen on this racetrack that requires a helmet? But anyway, less talk and more speed.
Did your whole head fit?
Thank you, as always, making a very graceful entrance everywhere, okay?
When I drive, if you feel uncomfortable, you can stay with me.
Okay, thank you. So what speed are we going to reach?
190 to 200.
Can you actually feel the speed inside of the car? Or is it like you can't really feel the speed because it's very stable and you...
Can try. 3, 1, go.
No. Death, how can we be turning at this speed? I can't even control the camera stabilizer. It's not over. Here we go for the second lap. Yes.
We're gonna have no problem. Okay, you're welcome. Here we go, third.
Very good.
Okay, the last lap.
What's gonna happen?
Jump.
Oh, the car jumps.
Yes.
How does he jump? Oh!
No, what? That's glee.
Oh. Wow. That's crazy. I think now I know a little bit of what a Formula 1 driver must feel. Those guys go up to about 300 kilometers per hour. Wow, amazing! But I think I've had enough speed for today. I've never been so happy to get out of a car. Another automotive brand that many of you have probably seen in Latin America is Yutone, a company that specializes in manufacturing electric buses. But beyond the vehicles, what's truly impressive is how they're made, because inside these factories almost everything is automated. Robotic arms moving giant parts from side to side, synchronized assembly lines, intelligent systems supervising production in real time. It's literally the kind of thing you only see in documentaries, and that's exactly what impressed me about this experience. The speed, the scale, how automated everything is. And actually, I think the reason why it's impacting me more is because of the videos circulating on the internet. From various factories in other countries in Asia or around the world which maybe aren't as well established, there's this notion that factories in China are also overcrowded. But that's not my impression at all. Not this time, nor in any of the factories I've ever visited in this country. On the contrary, it seemed to me that there was plenty of extra space. Everything was very well automated, very organized, very clean. And you can also see that everything is very well marked so that it's a safe experience for the workers who operate here. Having their own circuit, their own racetrack must be a tradition in this city because Yutong also has theirs. Except this one is even more interesting because it's one thing to get into a regular car and another thing entirely to see a bus almost about to tip over. I think they test the vehicles here, but it's really crazy. You feel like they're going to fall over, they're going to tip, but no, not at all. They have really good grip. Companies in China keep building crazier and crazier factories and headquarters. Just look at the video room they have in this company. They have a real-time screen here showing the buses that are operating all over the world. They also have data on the amount of oil saved, gas, the CO2 emissions they've prevented with their buses, and even the number of hectares of trees that all this data is equivalent to. This is one of the models that is most promoted in China today, and if you notice, it doesn't have a driver's cabin. This bus is fully autonomous. But that's not the only difference. Look inside. It doesn't look like a regular ordinary bus. I think this bus is designed more to be used inside a very large company, something like an industrial park or even inside airports. You land and have to take the little bus inside the airport. This could be a great option. In fact, maybe they're already using it that way in China. It's also great for sightseeing tours. Because if you notice, everything is glass. You can see the outside perfectly. And besides that, look, the seats are super comfortable. It has screens here where they probably show commercials or information about which route this unit belongs to. And also, like in all places in China, they have their security cameras. Any incident that happens inside the bus, there will be no doubt about what really happened. Last year, I was lucky enough to have some of my family visit me in my city of residence, Shenzhen, which is considered the most futuristic city in the world. And these vehicles are not in operation yet. But what they do have are autonomous taxis. Normally they have capacity for 3 or 4 people. And I was lucky enough to unexpectedly get a taxi of this kind. My uncle and my cousin who were visiting me were completely amazed. Impressed. And it's just an experience like no other. But something I remember a lot is that my uncle was making assumptions about how this car was going to look from the outside, because he said, of course, if it doesn't have a driver, then it must have sensors everywhere. It must have like bumps or protrusions. And in the end, it wasn't like that. That was one of the things that impressed him the most, that the car actually looked like a normal car. And it's the same with this bus. If you look in the front part here, it has the sensors. The same on this side. And it's because they're so well blended in. And the size is so reasonable, you don't even notice they're there. It's as if they were a natural part of the unit's design. But this technology is something that has been developed with vehicles very similar to this one, but for other purposes. For example, we have autonomous street cleaning vehicles. We also have autonomous vehicles that deliver packages. Autonomous vehicles inside factories that are used to transport parts or materials from one part of the factory to another. But even though electric cars and automated factories already seem pretty impressive, there is an industry that China is really betting on. And I think it's gonna define the next decade. Humanoid robots? And yes, I'm talking about robots that walk and interact with people. And little by little, they are starting to work in factories and warehouses, even in customer service or medical services. And right here in Zhengzhou, there's a place that looks like it's straight out of a science fiction movie. Just look at this wall they have at the entrance. It's a robotic wall. And it's amazing because anyone could have it in their company and customize it to create shapes, text, images. And if you get closer, you'll notice that they're kind of like triangles. They're all threaded onto an axis. And they synchronize to form all these patterns I'm telling you about. Watching them move is super fun, super satisfying. Look at this. Welcome to the 3T Center Embodied AI company. Honestly, this place is leaving me amazed, impressed. Because it's not just a robotics museum, it's practically a futuristic laboratory. Just look at how this whole room looks. And they have several demonstrations of robots that are being trained for tasks. Tasks that you would never think a robot would carry out in the future, or even in the present. Because this is happening in real time right now. Here, they develop and train humanoid robots using something known as embodied AI. Or embodied artificial intelligence. And basically, it means that artificial intelligence no longer just exists in a chatbot or on your computer, but that it occupies a physical body and can interact with the real world. Just a second ago, I just saw something really interesting. Something I never thought a robot would do in the future. And that's taking care of crops. We had already seen on other occasions that they plant crops or water the crops using drones. But I never imagined that these guys would also be in charge of them. And it's actually a great idea. Because it's not just about the mobility that this robot can have, but through sensors it can detect the physical and health condition of the plants or crops. So it can know which ones are sick and which ones are healthy. It's incredible what they're doing today with this technology. On this side, we have another model that they were using to organize boxes within an industrial setting. Something like a factory, a warehouse, or something similar. It was grabbing the boxes and placing them over there where that shelf is. This one here is a cleaning robot. I've seen it before in hotels. And even though it's already possible to have one like this at home, this one obviously has more advanced technology. And therefore it's also more expensive than the ones we can buy at any regular store. I see a spectacular application for this one here. And I don't know if you've ever been to a warehouse that provides logistics services. They have these kinds of platforms with all the products they store, and often to make the most of the space and to keep renting out square meters. They need to move the pallets on which the products are stored. This is an excellent solution for that, because you could even train it to know which product can be near which other product. Then, in this type of business, there are temperature and humidity restrictions, so you could have different areas within the same warehouse. And the robot would organize the product for you efficiently, to save space and energy, and obviously to provide better customer service. And that the product is stored optimally and safely, and maybe many of you already know about this, because there are even restaurants abroad where you can already see this. In fact, I think I saw a restaurant in Spain or in Mexico that became famous, because they also already have robots like this, and they usually perform different tasks. They can be delivering food to the tables, or you can be at your table, putting the dirty dishes you no longer use on them so they can take them to the kitchen and have them washed. And here we have some other versions of similar products. These cleaning robots and restaurant service robots that I've shown you are all from this brand called Henan, and this one here is one of my favorites. And if you come to China, you'll see it very frequently, because it's exactly the robot that all the hotels have to deliver food to your room. And even though China is a very safe country, in many hotels, food delivery people or anyone delivering what you've ordered are not allowed in. Go up to the hotel rooms. So what usually happens is that the product is left at the front desk. The receptionist is in charge of putting it into the robot and tells the robot which room it has to deliver to. Now you might be wondering, how does the robot know where each room is? Well, there's a very interesting explanation for that. And actually, that's the reason for the existence of the center we're visiting right now. Artificial intelligence can learn a lot from information on the internet. But for a robot to really help in factories, hospitals, or even at home, it has to learn and understand the space around it. It needs to learn how to walk, how to grab objects, to keep its balance. And even for safety, it has to learn how to react to people and physical objects that are in its way in real time. And that's exactly what they're doing here. They're teaching the robots how to live and coexist with us and with the world we live in. When I told you that China is really betting on these humanoid robots, I wasn't joking. And you can already feel it just by being in the country. You go to tourist attractions and they have robots dressed in traditional clothes. Or there's the example of the Chinese New Year Gala, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But that's not all. I've traveled through many cities in this country. And in all the ones I've been to, almost all of them have a training center very similar to this one. Each has something different, like they have different models of robots. Or they're teaching them different tasks. But this one in particular has two things that I found very interesting and that I had never seen before. One is this robot dog right here. They're training it to work in enclosed spaces or tunnels where it could be dangerous for humans to go in because there might be toxic substances, or maybe there's little oxygen, so they can perform those tasks that would harm our health. And that's why, to train this type of robot, they also create a kind of scenario in which it would operate. Because of course it has to learn to interact with the space where it will be working. So imagine that here you have an electrical installation. You need to change a part. Instead of having a person go in here, what you can do is send the robot and have it perform that task. And this is still in its infancy. But in the future, this is going to become more and more advanced. And the other one that I found very interesting is this one here, which is just like a hospital. And this robot here can be used for different types of therapy. You can use it to give massages. Most likely it has sensors that can provide information to the doctor that they can't see just through contact with the patient. As you can see, they have monitors here, which has all the information about what the machine did. But not only that, down here we also have some robot legs. Of course, I hadn't thought about that. But they could be programmed to provide support to people who need physical therapy, to walk again, because they had an accident, or because they had some kind of health problem. I'm going to share a fact that likely won't surprise anyone at this point in the video. China is already the country that installs the most robots in the world. And this makes a lot of sense when you understand what's happening here. Because for decades, China grew thanks to a huge workforce and mass production. But today the country is facing new challenges: fewer young workers, an aging population, increasingly higher wages, and increasingly stronger global technological competition. And what's interesting is that I don't think this is just a problem for China. I think that similar things are happening in many countries. That's the reason why you come to China, and nowadays you find robots absolutely everywhere. We just arrived at a very unique place in the city of Zhengzhou, and it's this building right here. It's part of a complex where microdramas are made. This is where they're filmed. In fact, you can see that there are even props back here. They're being used for the filming sets. And we also have the truck with the costumes here. For those who haven't heard of them, microdramas are like series or soap operas with very short episodes, and they're often filmed, if not always, in a vertical format. That means you can scroll in the app just like on TikTok. I had already heard about this phenomenon in China and I found it very interesting. Both Max and Noelia, as well as myself, have noticed that many of the content formats we've seen here in China later become popular in the rest of the world. One example is sales through live streams. China has been a master in that sector for a long time. In fact, in China, when you say you're a content creator, they ask you what product you sell because in China, social networks don't pay. When they find out that we don't do that, they're like, so how do you make money? Just like what happened with selling products through live streams, this format is doing the same thing. And lately, I've been getting a lot of ads for apps that offer this kind of content. Let's see what's inside here. I think we'll find some really interesting things, and we'll learn a lot about how this industry is developing here in China. We'll probably see something very similar in our own countries in the coming years. Welcome to the film and television studios of Dazhou in the city of Zhengzhou. If you're thinking that this place looks amazing, I'm thinking exactly the same thing. This complex is one of the most important centers in China for the production of microdramas. It has 50 sets, including hospitals, subway stations, offices, police stations, mansions, or retro clubs like the one we're in now. This base represents the new model of Chinese audiovisual production. And of course, it's designed to create content optimized for cell phones. That's crazy. If that doesn't show us how important short content is nowadays, I don't know what does. This place is huge. It has an area of 10,000 square meters, and that's how they can have spaces like this. Just look at how we went from a set that looked like 1930s China to a set that looks like a European Gothic church. At Daje, they use an all-inclusive system. Actors, makeup, costumes, editing, recording equipment. What is this place without a digital content factory with viral potential? And its location is no coincidence either. In the city of Zhengzhou, there are already more than 800 microdrama companies and 40 filming bases similar to this one. I walked out of the building that looked like a Gothic church, and suddenly we're in a kind of Chinese village. This place is confusing. You don't even know where you are or where you're supposed to go. It's just too much stimulation. I love that I stumbled upon this filming set because it made me rethink something I've been wondering about for many years. And that's because living in China, I've always had this feeling that the content people consume here is very different from what we see in Latin America. You just have to compare the movie listings at a Chinese cinema with those at any cinema in Mexico to realize it. That's why I always wondered how far the Chinese audiovisual industry could go beyond its borders. But being here, I understood something. Maybe microdramas are precisely the perfect tool to achieve this, because they don't depend on movie theaters or television networks. They are born directly on the internet. And they reach the audience through the same platforms that we all use every day. And that's why I'm not surprised that I keep seeing more and more ads for Chinese microdrama apps on my social media. Because while other industries export vehicles, phones, or consumer products, this one is trying to export something much more difficult: entertainment. And after everything we've seen on this journey, I'm starting to notice a pattern. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Mishue, electric vehicles, humanoid robots, or microdramas. These are completely different industries, but all of them have found fertile ground to grow right here in Henan province. And that made me wonder, why exactly in this province? Even though it's the capital, Zhengzhou is not the only important city in Henan province when it comes to industrialization. And the city of Luoyang is also nearby, which today is also very famous for tourism, for its attractions, for its history, and for its archaeology. But it is also an essential part of the history and success of China in this area of growth and development. and in how China became the factory of the world. This company called NLYC has a lot of history, because it was part of the first 5-year plan of the People's Republic of China since it was established in 1949 by Mao Zedong. In China, a large part of the country's economic priorities are organized in 5-year cycles known as 5-year plans. The first of these was launched in the 1950s with a very clear goal: to turn a mostly agricultural country into an industrial powerhouse. And to achieve this, cities like Luoyang were chosen to host some of the country's most important factories and industrial complexes, laying the foundations for what decades later would turn China into the factory of the world. That's how NLYC, a company born during the early years of China's industrialization, is now part of the supply chain for companies like BYD. Something similar happened with YTO, which started out manufacturing solutions to mechanize Chinese agriculture. And today it's one of the most important companies in the sector, accompanying the transformation of the countryside, not only in this country but also abroad and even in countries like our beloved Mexico. But enough talk, let's get to what matters. We're gonna get on this huge tractor, and it's also my first time getting on a tractor. Don't get me wrong, I don't understand anything technical, not about cars, tractors, or factories. I'm just sharing my experience with you. This is a huge vehicle. I'm about 2 meters above the ground, and it has 2 seats. Let me show you the inside. Well, the seat is super comfortable. Same with the steering wheel, like the distance it's at and the size. But it has a bunch of little things here, all around me. And of course, you need to have total visibility of the field in front of you, so the dashboard where it shows you the speed, the revolutions per minute, where you can bring up the navigation and even play music. Everything has to be on this side, but somehow, suddenly you see it as if you're entering Dexter's laboratory, but for a farmer. Well, honestly, I had never been on a tractor before. I mean, I think that's what I missed out on in kindergarten, guys. And now this kind gentleman is going to take us for a ride on the tractor. You said this side, right? You can drive. Should I drive? How do I drive it? Well, you drive, you drive. No, I don't want to accidentally hurt someone, so I'll let the gentleman drive. It's huge. This is turning out to be a very unique and also very fun experience. I think it's been an amazing experience visiting this province. We've learned so much. And above all, we've been able to experience the way China has made history for so many years and how it has transformed into what it is today and what it will become in the future. I invite you to try factory tourism. Well, I hope you loved this video, that you learned as much as I did, that you enjoyed the tour and everything we saw, and I'll see you next time. Subtitled.